Hello, everyone. My name is Jeremy Middleton, and I am currently a student in the Student Development and Leadership in Higher Education program at Angelo State University. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the strategies impacting student conduct, and more importantly, the use of different strategies that will impact the conduct process. So, um, I want to really, this is important, and I think it brings out the whole reason why this research is necessary, and is that many institutions struggle with discovering effective strategies for student conduct due to lack of consistency. Lack of consistency will be the determining factor for a lot of cases and a lot of what could become standard operating procedures across the nation, or at least across a university system, like Texas A&M, which is what we'll be using for research. A little bit of background. Initially, when schools opened, student conduct cases were actually being held by the police or federal governments. And what I mean by that is, I always use this as an example that a person who was caught cheating would have to be handled by the police, which means jail time or prison time just for cheating on a test or cheating on an assignment, which some may feel that could be a little bit drastic. Afterwards, the nation said, okay, that's enough. Schools need to handle their own cases to an extent, and sanctions and a student conduct process began. However, these sanctions came with a lot of disparities, and those disparities really hit hard for low income students or minority students and led to more clarifications being needed as the future was going to move forward in student conduct. So, the problem that needs to be addressed is that educational institutions do not have a universal set of strategies being used for student conduct. And that universal set not being used leads to unknowing changes that are going to impact the process for each institution as well as the system as a whole. This research is targeted for individuals that were involved in the student conduct process in the past or are currently involved in it. And it shows implications for all levels of education, although this research will be held and housed in higher education form. The importance of this study is, and its significance, is that the student conduct process has a severe impact on each student's future. If a student violates a rule, this process will determine how they proceed forward in education. Are they suspended? Are they expelled? Do they get a second chance? And so on and so forth. And some schools have strict strategies. It could be fines for every single violation. It could be educational outcomes that are extremely sensitive, and therefore students may or may not learn from it. And this research will help determine what is the best strategies across the board. The research questions that will be used and discussed will be how do students feel the student discipline process may deter them from violating rules in the future? The more important part is their feelings about deterrence and their knowledge of the student discipline process. Their knowledge of the process beforehand. Did we do a good job of talking and discussing the process during orientation or throughout their years or sending mass emails? And their knowledge after the process. Did they learn how it worked? Did they learn something new during the process? Do they think this process was fair? The second question would be, how do student conduct administrators perceive the impact they have on the student discipline process? Okay, this question is very qualitative in the sense of, is their perception going to be positive, negative, or neutral? And it also could be quantitative because those answers are going to be used in Likert form and develop an outcome or numerical outcome for those responses. And finally, how is the use of different strategies in the student discipline process currently impacted the amount of cases? So we're going to look at historical case numbers through the administrators. We're going to talk about the case numbers, the case types, the case efficiency and frequency. And what that does will help us set somewhat of a baseline and also set an outcome. For example, an administrator was hired at X date. We're going to look at their cases 2 years prior. We're going to look at the cases 2 years after they've been hired and see how their impact has, shown on the student conduct process in the cases. So a little bit of literature. This talks about the relationship building, and I think it's important that in the student conduct process, having a relationship with each student, and this relationship can be quick, but it's relationship building that lets the administrator dive deeper into the reasons why violations had occurred, which then can give the administrator a better understanding of what outcome is best for the situation. This talks about the discipline strategies that contribute to the student teacher relationship. I believe that this is key because a lot of cases that come from student conduct tend to be classroom behavior or classroom management cases. And the student teacher relationship is crucial in that aspect. And because if a relationship is not set and boundaries are not set, then classroom behavior can get out of hand, and teachers just like to pass it on to the student conduct administrator without handling it properly in class before moving forward. Again, not building that proper relationship in order to educate the student and help them progress. Finally, school climate and discipline strategies. If students are hearing on the news or reading about it, or when they're touring, that this is a party school or students get in trouble all the time, et cetera, that's going to weigh on their decision to attend this campus. If students decide that people are always getting in trouble and they're getting suspended or kicked out because they attended the school and got in trouble for what they may believe is a minor infraction, they may feel that they don't want to attend this institution anymore. And rightfully so. It's their decision making. And so it's up to the institution to have a good discipline climate in order for students to understand that you are not your mistakes. You can change and there are ways to help. So let's talk about the methodology. Our design is very simple. We're going to use a combination of surveys and student data, and that will lead us to a mixed method study. And more importantly, I think it's good to turn out that we have qualitative and quantitative responses because this data will have emotional impacts involved. The targeted population are students and staff members of the Texas A&M University system of schools. So all of the schools that fall under the Texas A&M University system will have the opportunity to provide us participants. Students will receive an email, and upon completion of this survey and completion of the questions involved, they will be entered into a drawing as incentive. And it's up to them if they would like to be entered. They do not have to, and it's not forced. The targeted population for administrators will be in the same system. However, administrators will not have the opportunity to bail out on this. They are required to participate and produce data if necessary. An email will be sent out from the chancellor to ensure participation. So the student survey is going to be sent out in Qualtrics, which is a common survey platform that is used through higher education and other schools and lower education as well. The responses will be gathered and codified, and to ensure anonymity, and will be kept offline once received. And then the surveys will questions both be open-end and Likert scale. So our collection plan is very simple. After the initial email is sent out, researchers will have the signed consent, and the survey will be sent out. Once it's done, we will collect it and again export it to Excel so that it can be aggregated and collected all forms necessary. So how we will analyze this data, it's important to note that there's quantitative and qualitative information. So we will use both content analysis as well as frequency, mean, median, mode, standard deviation for the numerical data that's produced. The Likert scale questions will be listed under ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree, and then those responses will be turned into numerical numbers using to be used for frequency, as well as the student data that we receive in terms for case types, case numbers, and case amounts. All of those will be codified as well, so we can gather the proper data. In conclusion, I think it's important to understand that the use of the different strategies in the conduct process will lead to a better standard operating procedure for discipline. And that is what we're searching for, is a standard operating procedure with multiple forms of involvement. Each student and each case is unique, and we cannot have a defined black and white book of talk about this and talk about that leads to this outcome. That can't happen because each case is unique. Better strategies can lead to less recidivism and more deterrence. And less recidivism means less cases and more learning. And this is significant across the board, especially when it comes to legal aspects, because the more the system is unique and connected, the better off the school will be. Here are your references. Again, thank you for attending this presentation, and please reach out if you have any questions, comments, or concerns.